Welcome, everybody. I'm Steve Lentini, and I'm the host for Different Thinking for Different Times. And this is season 7, and this is a labor of love. My work is about helping each individual discover how small-minded their thinking is, including my own, by the way. I'm still working on it. I wrote the book. One of the books I wrote is You Might Be Full of Shit If. And I freely say I'm full of shit somewhere. And we all have to get over ourselves. And my guest today is a great example of that, where we have to get over ourselves as a society. And you're going to be fascinated by Tom Joseph and what he's up to with America's Main Street Party. So without further ado, welcome, Tom Joseph. Everyone, you're going to love this. Stay for the whole episode. Tom, welcome.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Steve, for the nice introduction.
You're welcome. I mean, what you've established and started with James Wilson is fascinating because it really goes against small-minded thinking, which is the whole purpose of this podcast. So I'm glad your office reached out, and when I read about you, it's amazing. So I'm going to let you go into what your background is. Tell us a little bit about you, how this got started, and then we'll talk further about some of the goals and what you'd hope we can achieve with your ideas.
Yeah. Well, I am, I'm not an academic. I'm not a politician. I'm not a lawyer. I mean, I'm a person who has a small business who, just like everybody else, is concerned about how divisive everything is in this country. And I think I was telling you before we got on here is that I was sitting during the COVID. I'm just wondering if partisanship would kill us. And I thought, there must be some way to improve the system. I didn't want to run for office, but I thought that if I did get financial help, some PPP money, I did want to spend some time and work on what I think is a really big problem, that is the fairness in elections. And the idea I came up with was to have basically a moneyless contest, and that they're using technology. You create a portal and an app. And kind of like my inspiration was American Idol. I had joked one day that we do a better job picking the next American Idol than we do the next representative from Congress. It's true. We put way more effort into it.
Yeah.
And I really thought that, a multi-round competition where you use a platform, you don't let people advertise, you could create a level playing field. And what I discovered is that there's a loophole. And the loophole is that if people running for office don't spend money, a political party can do whatever they want to nominate it. So it really opened up the door for us to create an alternate primary. We're calling this a people's primary system. But, the parties will not let us fix the public election system, either the primary or the general election. They resist every type of reform. So here's the way around it. Just create a better one and then elect the person who wins that contest. And so the idea is to focus this on gerrymandered districts. It always drove me nuts that an uncompetitive district is a place that people would not go, because as a business person, you think uncompetitive, this is where I'd like to launch my business. Why is this not happening? Well, it's because it's rigged. And, people don't go in an uncompetitive district because it's rigged. So if you can figure out a way, the saying goes that if you're in a rigged game and you want to win, you have to change it. And that's what we've done. We've created a new game. And it's a way where anybody can run for Congress. We're using the political committee system in a very different way. We're using local committees to basically be the officiating committee for the contest. So people that are in the district will, oversee the nominating process, just like an Olympic committee oversees a track event.
Mm-hmm.
The political party is really a tech company that publishes this free and equal contest.
Mm-hmm.
And then what we're doing is we want to recruit a super PAC that would basically back the winner in the general election. And it'd be a very unique way to use a super PAC because, right now super PACs are used for partisan purposes. They're either backing a specific candidate who has an agenda for the donor, or they're backing a particular cause. This super PAC is backing the winner. The people, the person the people pick is the first super PAC that would be for the common good. So we know that there are wealthy people out there that hate the two-party system as much as you and I do, who would see this as an opportunity for them to go down in history as capitalizing a more perfect union. To put together the super PAC is to do the app is relatively inexpensive. Right now, we are at our beta version. Our goal is to get a version of this out to the public where they can actually play with it like Wordle.
Hmm.
that we will run simulated elections on a weekly basis and allow them to kind of become familiar with it, because overcome that paradigm shift, people have to understand how it works. And we think once they do that, then we can get more funding to actually implement this. I think we're a bit late for 2026. There's a lot of logistics that happen, but if we can, get this together for 2028, I think we could come in and take 20 red seats and 20 blue seats and create four factions basically in Congress and require them to really negotiate for legislation like they're supposed to.
I love it. A dialogue. I've been talking about it from time to time. I'll have an episode about politics for different thinking and for different times. And I say, as an independent, the two-party system isn't working. And it's fascinating how people run and lie, both sides, about certain things, blatantly lie, using fear often to motivate one side or the other, their side. And it doesn't matter which party, although it seems to me lately, the last 8, 10 years, the Democrats have resorted to becoming a party that does anything to win. I mean, really, very dirty tricks, and that's always been some part of politics, but it's really gone haywire, and that shouldn't be necessary. And then when you talk about changes to the system, I mean, how long has the term limit movement been going on, trying to gather traction for a constitutional
You know, I've I've
convention, right?
I've I've come full circle on term limits. Well,
Yeah, I read about it.
originally, one
Tell
of
me.
the
Yeah, tell us about that.
well, you think about it. We want term limits now because the elections are rigged and
Right.
you can't get bad people out. But if you have a fair contest, why get rid of a great representative?
I
So,
agree. I read
if you
your
have a
views
great
on that.
statesperson, then the idea, and I think the founders just never thought that, this would really be an issue, that things would be so unfair that we'd need term limits.
Well,
But the
true.
idea that if it's, think about this, if somebody's trying out for the Olympic team, we don't have limits on the number of times they can make it because they make it fairly, right? If you're still the
Right.
fastest 100-yard sprinter, we want you to
You're
go.
getting
And the
in, right.
same rules ought to apply. Why this isn't like the Olympics, why this is the way it is goofy. And the fact, it's funny, I've pitched this to people in election reform, scratching their heads because they're like, oh my God, there's a legal way to do this. We have been spending hundreds of millions of dollars, spending decades trying to implement things like ranked choice voting and get rid of Citizens United and do all those things. And the sad truth is that if you implement all those election reforms, our election system is still pretty bad. It really just makes a terrible system slightly less worse. There's still super donors who will be able to, write checks outside the district and make sure that their person gets reelected. And until you eliminate that, the system will not work. The system we came up with is the only thing that will do that, and it requires no new laws.
I love it. I read that, by the way. And that's where because I'm talking about learning how to expand my own small-minded thinking, because I believe each person has to do it before we'll see a shift in society. When I read that, I thought that's a good idea. There, I'm willing to change my mind and have a dialogue about that. And I think it's a very good idea and a good point. That if we change a few things like term limits, we might end up eliminating people who are willing to have a dialogue and not follow party line. Like you see so much today, if a Democrat steps out of line and they all vote in lockstep on certain issues, you got to question that. Now, John Fetterman in the Democratic Party has resisted and stood up about the nasty rhetoric that was involved with Republicans in the last election. And he's stepped away on other things like having a strong border and supporting deportations. And I don't always agree with the way that ICE has done it recently. But still, what happens is people forget when you're protesting law enforcement and you're allowing people to come in the country illegally, what you're saying is come on in and you can disobey. It's only a misdemeanor. You can disobey that misdemeanor. Well, wait a minute. Let me choose a few other misdemeanors. Are there things that regular citizens can choose to disobey? we have to have a united front on immigration. And the Clintons and
Well,
Obama and many other politicians have actually gone on record to say the same things. Now, it's funny, they disappear recently, but you can dig up all the statements by Hillary Clinton, by Bill Clinton, and by Barack Obama, who talked about you can't have an open border. And they both deported, by the way, millions of people together.
yeah,
They
yeah.
deported 10 million people. But to your point about a dialogue, and the term limits wouldn't necessarily be the solution, because you might lose very good people.
It's
So
just one of the things that I mentioned. James Wilson, you mentioned at the
yes,
beginning.
yes.
I found this piece of this fascinating. That there's a lot of historical context here. James Wilson is actually the person who penned the U.S. Constitution. He does not get much credit. Madison gets a lot of credit because he brokered a very important deal. But the nerd behind the Constitution was James Wilson, professor from Penn, who wrote a paper where he studied what James Wilson believed coming into the Constitutional Convention and what
Mm-hmm,
Madison believed coming in. And Madison was a Virginia Plan guy. Wilson has what became the Constitution, the separations of powers, having a
mm-hmm,
popular vote for president, the electoral, all these things were James Wilson's stuff. He was on the committee of detail, and the versions of the Constitution that came out were in his handwriting.
mm.
So he was the person who really, when it came time to really articulate what they had agreed on in the convention, was the guy who put pen to paper.
He
Three
did
years
the nuts
after he
and
did
bolts.
this, but yeah, the nuts. 3 years after this, he was tasked with rewriting the Pennsylvania Constitution. And one very important thing that he did when he did that, that up until that point, back in 1689, English Bill of Rights first declared that elections would be free, that anybody could run for an office. What
Mm-hmm,
Wilson did was added the words "and equal" to that clause. He's the first person to ever do that. And he declared that if elections weren't fair, it didn't matter if they were free, everything would get messed up. So basically, at the end of 1790, after this passed in Pennsylvania, he became the first law lecturer at the College of Philadelphia, which became University of Pennsylvania. This became the Penn Cary Law School.
mm-hmm,
He had the very first law lecture there, and he did it in front of the nation's founders. George Washington was there, Governor Morris from Pennsylvania. Both Congresses of Pennsylvania and the United States sat for his lecture.
mm-hmm.
The keynote topic was the free and equal election clause. And he basically told everybody in that room, he said, the states must guarantee that. And if they don't, because he said this is the fountain of democracy. And if you poison the fountain, it spreads to all aspects of government. So
Yeah,
here we are with unfair elections, and we have a messed up court, Congress, executive branch, bureaucracy. It is all messed up.
it
And I
is all.
think it all ties back to the fountain of democracy being poisoned, that we don't have fair elections. And there's really no reason why we couldn't have done this decades ago. I mean, technology makes this easy, but the whole idea that this would be fair, this could have been done a long time ago. People in power just don't want to give up the power.
Yeah, it's true. And the other thing, though, is the small-minded thinking. That most people don't manage their brain. They believe they're thinking. And today we have leaders from both parties that do this. They point fingers at each other. There's no accountability accepted. So they're modeling poor behavior. They don't want to have a dialogue. They don't want to compromise for the benefit of the people. And then what they're doing, that modeling is bizarre, because they expect the general population to behave better with decorum and respect, and they're not doing it themselves. And so until individuals are willing to question their thinking. Now, let me tell you how long it's going to take, or at least how much of a challenge it is. Witness any convention of either party. People are so swayed and believing in their party that the antics are on either side indicative of people locked into small-minded thinking, because there's no consideration of anything outside of what the Democratic platform is or the Republican platform is. And they cheer with such energy for some of the craziest things. Right. Let's talk about Chuck Schumer got up and said that voter ID equates to Jim Crow 2.0. It
It's
is so
interesting you bring
ridiculous.
this up because I think this is crazy thinking that in 2026, that we aren't doing the same thing we require people to do, to get onto airplanes or to buy liquor or to do all these other things. And basically, our approach, Steve, is going to have the most secure system. Well, we have not. Fortunately, we're partnering with a group called the Digital Democracy Project. If you want another guest on the show, very fascinating. Ramon Perez runs a nonprofit organization. He's a veteran who was frustrated that we spent, money and lies and blood to bring democracy to other countries, and it's falling apart here. What Ramon is doing is he's building an app. He's built an app, and it's now running in 8 states where people can weigh in on legislation, and what the legislators want to know is that, are these my voters? So Ramon is using an application called Votes. Votes uses blockchain developed by a guy out of Carnegie Mellon here in Pittsburgh. I went to Carnegie Mellon too.
Mm-hmm.
And it assures that these legislators, that when they see, people supporting this legislation or not supporting it, these were their actual voters in their actual district. So I'm partnering now with Ramon. He's going to put our contest on top of the app. But same thing. We want security. We want ID. We want we want encryption. We want to assure that these votes are, secure. The other thing that we're looking at doing that you can do, talk about new open thinking. Everything old is new again. The whole idea behind polling locations is that somebody walk up and they say, "Yeah, Steve, I know Steve. He can vote. I know." Well, the polling location got so big that you can't do that. Well, with technology, you can create, what I'm going to do is create virtual polling locations that are small. It could be like an apartment building. So you could go on and see the dots in there and say, "Hey, there's a dot for Steve. Steve, you voted." Say, "Hey, I didn't vote. There's something wrong with that." Now you can report that. You're going to see that you voted, but it's the same concept that people
Yeah.
in the small community could validate that. Now you can have your conspiracy theorists working for you. They can be
Yeah.
checking all the,
Yeah.
hey, they're dead. Oh, find my dead people. We can have people finding all the dead people in the system.
Well, going back to what Schumer said about the voter ID is James Crow 2.0, the Democrats were saying that about Georgia's election changes, where they expanded neutral zones to 150 feet, and you couldn't bring food or water to people. It had to be, you either brought it yourself, but they couldn't have vendors. And people were saying that was James Crow 2.0. And you know what the turnout was? They had record turnouts and record participation by Black Americans. And guess what? For voter ID, 71% in a poll that was out recently, 71% of African Americans support voter ID. So,
Yeah.
To say that it's
No, this is just a
James Crow
political issue.
2.0,
This is just
well,
something they
that's my
want to hang
point.
their hats on.
It's small-minded thinking, continuing to anger the smallest-minded thinkers in their parties, because really, for people that go to the extreme and then they go to extremes and then worry and maybe even do some violence, right? It forces them to do some crazy things because they believe they're thinking. This is what we're getting to with this two-party system, and that's why what you're talking about, America's Main Street Party, is a way to break that because of just how you describe doing it.
Yeah. And getting people, one of the things we had to call it a party because what we want to do is that when people win the contest, ultimately we want them to automatically be on the general election ballot. At this stage, we're not a national party. So once somebody wins the contest, we'd have to get them signatures to get them on the general election ballot.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, we want to qualify, and we can do that. Like there's the rules to do it. You have to have a national convention. Well, ours would be like a users group meeting. So we
Mm-hmm.
can do, I had a couple of law students from Penn actually
Mm-hmm.
do the research in the Federal Election Commission regulations, and
Mm-hmm.
they wrote a paper. It's on our Wilson's Fountain website. I have two websites. One's wilsonsfountain.us. It's
Wait a
really
minute.
our
Let's say that
sandbox
again. It's
for
Wilson's Fountain.
Wilson's Fountain US. It is, I describe it as a sandbox. It does not, I'm not looking for any money there. This is just a place where we've done research. I've hired college students out of Philadelphia to write papers, to research election laws,
Mm-hmm.
to really examine this whole concept of free and equal elections
Mm-hmm.
and the impact it would make on the system.
Mm-hmm.
America's Main Street Party is a political party. I'm very restricted on money that can go in there. The maximum donation I can accept is $5,000. Steve, don't give me any more than that per year. But because of that, I have to be very careful about what I do within the party in terms of just focusing it on the product developments. I hired actually a couple interns out of Drexel who built a prototype. Now Ramon at Digital Democracy Project is taking that prototype and creating a beta version of it. But we
Mm-hmm.
want to have a version of this run basically elections on a weekly basis, like a mock election using avatar candidates, and let citizens play with the app, become familiar with it, and hopefully donate and get us to the next level.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's the other website? So it's
Oh, it's
wilsonsfounding.us, and
.us.
what's the other one?
Yeah, the one where I take donations, I got to mention that one, is the mainstreetparty.org. But Main Street Party, and
TheMainStreetParty.org, the Main
no,
Street, or just Main Street?
mainstreetparty.org. If you Google America's Main Street Party, you'll find it. And go to the
MainStreetParty.org.
nominating, yeah, I'd recommend going to the nominating process page that describes, our new system, a new way to nominate. It's a 5-step process. I'm going to go through it.
Mm-hmm.
First, there's what's called the endorsement round.
Mm-hmm.
You think about it, Steve. If we allow people to run for office for free, a lot of people are going to run. So how do you reduce that field? And this is the idea that the students came up with, that the candidates have to weigh in on 7 issues that they think will be for Congress in the coming term: 2 global, 3 national, 2 local, and take 1 to 3 positions and make it so that the constituents can line up with them easily.
I love
Kind of
that
like
idea.
Match.com without the mystery. You'd be able to come in, put your criteria, and you could say, may I only care about 3, but you're going to get a lot more candidates coming back. And then we
Mm-hmm.
also have a thing called approval voting. One of the things I've learned over the last couple of years, a lot of different voting methods, your ranked choice. Approval voting was where you're allowed to vote for everybody you approve of. And so in the early rounds of this, we want people to basically endorse as many people that fit their views. And
Mm-hmm.
what we want to do is go from a large field to a top 20, then to a top 10, and then to a top 4 using approval voting. We call this our endorsement round. And we'll
Mm-hmm.
whittle the field over a 3-week period down to a top 4. Again,
I love the
copying
idea.
from American Idol. When we get to top 4, we're calling this the virtual town hall round. And
Mm-hmm.
additional questions will be posed to the candidates, and they'll be able to record additional videos that will go to their profile page. So
Mm-hmm.
constituents basically go to the candidate's profile page. Instead of getting ads on TV, they'll just get their ads. They'll be opt-in. They'll get their public service announcements on these different topics. During the virtual town hall round, the nominating committee is going to go out to the district and get questions from the different aspect or distant sections of the district. Now, we're targeting gerrymandered districts, so you're going to have an opposition party function there. We want to make sure their voices are heard because we want them to vote for this candidate too. We don't want them to check out.
I agree. Now, wait a minute. I want to go back because I don't know that all our listeners will get your connection to the American Idol. I think that was you and I talking about that. So
Oh, that's right.
tell that analogy again, right? Go ahead.
Well, when I was coming up with this idea, what happened was I was really kind of stuck. I wanted to do a third party kind of traditionally as it
Mm-hmm.
started, and
Mm-hmm.
I realized that it really wasn't significant change.
Mm-hmm.
Change occurs when it's significant,
Mm-hmm.
disruptive. And one day I was an American Idol fan, and I just kind of joked that we do a better job picking the next American Idol than the next U.S. representative of Congress. And I thought, this is really what we need. We need a multi-round contest. In early rounds, people use approval voting in American Idol. But,
Mm-hmm.
we have technology. We are great at contests. Why? We don't have a contest here. This is the most important contest. It's the only one we don't have
It's
one
true.
for.
It's true.
So, and we watch curling. So I think people would be interested in a contest like this. So we get to the top 4 now, and like I said, so people get an analogy sports. You're in the final 4. Though I think more people engage at this level, and now we do ranked choice voting on 4. And
Mm-hmm.
what will happen, since we're going to a top 2,
Mm-hmm.
we don't have to worry about some of the oddities of ranked choice voting. So,
Mm-hmm.
you do your top 4, you take the 4th place finisher, you reallocate their votes, you get to top 2. Nobody should be able to argue with that top 2. You do a final debate round. The nominating committee moderates the final debate. Again, another week. So in 5 weeks, you've eliminated a large field, given the public a chance to digest this material. No text messages, no ads, no junk mail, peace on your TV, and
Mm-hmm.
an opportunity to really make the people accountable. Because guess what? When they win and they come back, they got to go through the free and equal process to win again. And so if they haven't been representing the people, their competition will point it out.
Yeah. People will pick someone else.
And we're going to get real specific on issues. So right now, you don't really get people that are more saying, I'm a Democrat or Republican. What does that mean? You don't even know what that means day to day. We're going to, require that they not only these 7 issues, there's going to be places in the application where they can further articulate positions on a lot of issues. In addition to but it'll all be equal. Every candidate will have an equal way of displaying what they know. If it's video, equal number of seconds. If it's a text, equal number of characters. If it's a graphic, same number of pixels.
I love it. I love it. What do you think are the obstacles, or how long? Second question would be, how long do you think it'll take to make even some impact on one election in let's say in Pittsburgh?
Quickly or forever?
I like
So
that.
this is really about the technology end of this. Is there's not a challenge here. The legal aspects, not a challenge. The challenge, getting people in the media to write about, getting traction, getting people to wrap their heads around the idea, to think that it's actually possible. I think one of the issues that we have is that people have given up hope. And my mother tells me she believes in me. She doesn't believe in us.
It's very true. People to some degree have given up hope, and or they just decide to further entrench in the established system, which is the two parties doing this. And then they can't even go home for a weekend with their uncle because he's a left winger or a right winger, and they're in the middle, or they're in the opposite side, and people are fighting. When it starts to impact the home, we've really lost our way. And then when it translates into violence on the streets,
Well,
we've lost our way.
yeah. And one thing to think about, I wrote an article that was written, published in the Independent Voter News. And the point was that we now have, I think it's 20 or 21 states where the representative of the U.S. House is from one party. And 8 states are one representative away from that becoming like 29 states where one party represents them in the House of Representatives. That is not the way this is supposed to work.
No. And in fact, in some states, or like New York City, it's basically turned into that. It's one party, regardless of who runs. And if it broke it down into districts like you're talking about, especially in the gerrymandered districts, there's a possibility of something new occurring.
Yeah.
The first is small. This acorn, I picked the acorn for small-minded thinker because, well, let me tell you, neurologists have said, Steve, it's the amygdala, that looks more like a walnut. So what I tell them is, listen, it's easier for looking at an acorn to picture an acorn tree. Not as many people know what a walnut tree looks like. So, and the idea about this has got to get crushed into the ground and stomped into the dirt to even possibly become an oak tree. And really, that's our ego. That's what's needed in our thinking as human beings. Each individual, because what happens is we're all judging and listening to the voice. And when it gets fully entrenched, it's now running us. And I wrote the book Sage Advice a couple of years ago, where I looked up sages for going back to BC times and moved into modern times. And a few of the sages in the book are alive. But it's fascinating how many talked about not listening to this voice. And Rainer Maria Rilke said something. He said, my little voice, I call it the little hooligan. And he would ask people, his students, will you let the little hooligan run you, or will you run it? George Ivanovich Gurdjieff in the late 1800s, he died in 1940. So in the early 1900s, he called it the machine. And will you let the machine run you, or will you run it? And now brain science is actually proven with fMRIs, facilitated MRIs. They got people wired up, and they're mostly negative thinkers, and they give them exercises to help them challenge those entrenched negative thoughts. And they witnessed and are witnessing new neural pathways opened on the opposite side where the negative was stored. New neural pathways, like stroke victims, so that we can reprogram our mind. And Dr. Daniel Amen is a neuro researcher and a double board certified psychiatrist, of which I'm not, nor a neural researcher. I don't have science to back it up, but this was because when I had my near-death experience, that little thinker didn't go with me. I was one with I was home. I was one with pure consciousness. But anyway, he called his brain. He suggests naming his brain as well. He calls it Little Hermie. He named it after his rambunctious, troublesome pet raccoon he had as a teenager. That's our brains when we believe it. We're believing something that keeps us stuck in small minded thinking. And we forget we live in a universe. I mean, humans think they think like God. We are so far off. We are. It is beyond human comprehension, at least in my
Well,
experience.
to answer
By
your
the way,
question,
today is my 8,481st day as a second chance at life, because I passed away on November
well,
18th,
congratulations.
2002. Well, every day I'm grateful. So I wake up here
Yeah.
and I know I have things to do like this podcast. And I was really looking forward to, because of your ideas and your thinking, this is challenging small-minded thinking in a big way.
Well,
How do we
the approach we want to use on the implementation is to really target. I like to think that I'm launching a business, not a third party, that we're launching an app, that we're trying to get market share. And I think third parties, alternate parties have failed. So for me, what I do, a business, all we have to do is get to the next step of the business plan. As long as we keep proceeding down the business plan, we'll be okay. And businesses and new products succeed because they find early adopters. So getting back to your issue, yeah, I think it'd be a hard time to convince the unconvincible or those who are stuck. At the beginning, we're going to look for the people who are receptive, young people, our system, talk about being stuck, and back to the issue of voter IDs and that. Why are we designing a system for the least common denominator? I mean, we want to design the systems today for people, how they work, and they use their mobile devices and for the next generation. So that's going to be our approach. And I think the other thing that we're doing, since we're targeting House districts and we don't need to do them all, we're just either doing 20 red, 20 blue, or 10 red, 10 blue. All we have to do is get a foothold and prove that we can be successful. So getting back to your, how long does this take? Quickly and forever. I mean, I think that, as we continue to move down the path, it's going actually pretty quickly. When I think about where I was a year ago, I had nothing. And now with these kids, I mean, imagine once we get professionals working on it, these college kids really produce fantastic content. I'd really encourage people to go, to wilsonsfountain.us to read some of the papers, but more importantly on mainstreetparty.org, there is the proof of concept page that has the demos of the app that have been developed. So we have demos that are coming out. And like I said, eventually we'll have a live app that people can download and play with, not use an election yet, but play with and get the context of how this will work.
How will you select the first districts where you'll test this or actually do it?
That's a great question. Because parties typically look for candidates. We're looking for districts like markets, ripe markets. And the statistics we're looking at is we want a district where the previous winner won with between 65% and 75% of the vote. And the idea is that you want somebody that if you bring in a second candidate in that district, who's, say it's a red district, we bring in a pink candidate, and they split the vote. We don't want the opposition party to be able to win. They have to have a small enough number they can't win, but they have to be large enough where they participate and make a difference. Go too far below like 20%, say they only had 10% of the vote, that's called a skewed bell curve. And looking at putting populations, spectrums on populations, it is possible for bell curves to actually skew right, skew left. The district is too, but when you put a liberal town like into a conservative district or a conservative town into a liberal district, it actually normalizes the curve. And our theory is you get somebody at the center of that curve. It's a pink or baby blue candidate. It's not a navy ruby red candidate. They're unbound now from the party due to money. They know to get reelected, they got to go back through that contest and win their votes. The super donor money means nothing to them.
I love that idea. When you think of influence, and right now it's tied to money, and you see how much is spent on the networks, how is the media going to, are they going to adopt this? Are they going to embrace
They probably
this?
hate this idea too. I mean, it's going to kill. There's a lot of advertising that occurs during election season. My business, I've run an accounting service for small businesses, and they complain that people in the PR industry complain that during election season they can't get their clients ads on TV. because the political ads are taking all the space and driving the price up.
Yeah.
And they actually have to plan for different business during certain election season for their clients to get their products marketed. Our election system actually hurts the economy in ways that people don't even understand.
Yeah. Well, and then you have people that are super wealthy on either side donating hundreds of millions. And that, to me, is there's something wrong with that. And that definitely needs to be changed. And it's part of what you're talking
Yeah.
about.
I mean, I'm a capitalist, but we have capitalism run amok. And, when it's getting into the system to change fairness and make things unfair,
Yeah,
then we got to do something significantly different.
I
And this
agree.
is significantly different. Whether people buy into it or not, we'll see. But the
Very
word is
different.
starting to get out. We just started doing these podcasts with something to show.
Hmm.
My background, when I got out of engineering school at Carnegie Mellon, went to work for Westinghouse and
Hmm.
worked in product development. And I worked for a guy who's a guru in product development, and he more or less said that, hey, you got to go through proof of concept, development, implementation, these certain
Hmm.
sequences. If you don't do it in order, you'll wind up repeating it and doing it over again. So
Hmm.
we're taking that same approach here, is that we've completed a proof of concept, we're now developing it. It's time to market it and get the public involved. Hopefully in 2 years, we can make a big impact. If a
I
miracle happens, we could do it this year, but I'm not anticipating a miracle.
Well, and miracles do occur. We live in one. We're living in a miracle. I remind people of that. So when people have a thought about safety of this, how do you answer that? Right? If it's going to
But
be on
like I
a
said,
phone or what?
the technology that's being used, this Votes app, is actually used by service members when they're on a submarine
Hmm.
or if they're in a war zone where there's no mail delivery. So I
Hmm.
think this is about, I can't remember how many years ago, it may have been as long as 10 years ago, that the government came up. This is before things got really political about
Yeah.
elections, but
Yeah.
they actually funded this research and do it using blockchain to make sure that all service members could vote regardless. Because you imagine, if you're in a submarine, you can't get that ballot out.
Right.
So there states now accept this app. This app is I don't know the number. If you look up votes, you can find out how
Yeah.
many states it's accepted. But it's all blockchain. It's all
And how do
highly
you,
secure.
and you'll get in, you'll be able to partner with that? Do they have a
Yeah, I
process
mean,
where
well,
they allow
Digital
you in?
Democracy Project is already doing it, and there's
Good.
actually other. We're looking at. There's other ones that are Votes as a commercial app. There's a um, siv.org. It's called Secure Internet Voting. A guy named David Ernst, who's put a lot of energy to make this available, not just in the US, but around the world. I think he was working with people in Ukraine to figure out how they could use technology to make sure
Hmm.
that they could have elections. There's an
Hmm.
amazing amount of work that I discovered is being done to make sure that people can vote securely. There's like three competing technologies in that area. So I'm not really people make a big deal about it. One thing I say is, our elections are already rigged by ourselves. I don't know if any foreign government wants to come in and mess with it. We're screwing it up pretty good on our own.
We are. We
They're
are.
just wasting money if they're trying to mess with our elections.
Yeah. Well, and I wasn't concerned of your concerns because I know you've done the research, right? I'm listening to everything you're saying in your process, but I'm imagining the average person wondering that. So you answered it. I didn't
Well,
know that there was a Votes app. So good. I'll
and
look
then,
into.
actually, I run an accounting service. We host bookkeeping data for we basically process close to $1 trillion worth of stuff. We are under attack every day
Mm,
for that. I can't imagine there's any election system that's under any more of an attack than the banking systems and these commercial systems. And I don't know, you hear these
it's
experts
true.
saying that people really want to do this. They're just pumping up their own job. This happens one day, they got to keep this secure, where there's other people who are doing this 365 days a year for years
24
to
hours a day.
protect. Yeah, I mean, you would blow your mind if you saw how many people are hitting our website trying to get in and break in and get the bank codes. Basically, they can't get the money. We don't even have the cash. They just want to get the account number.
Wow. Yeah. Another indictment of our times. But we're focusing on politics, and I love your message. So tell people again the websites, how they can help you, what would really
Sure.
be ideal for you.
Well, right now, spreading the word. America's Main Street Party, mainstreetparty.org. look at the demos. There's actually a 1-minute video called A Brand New Way, explains the contest. It's on the nominating process page. Basically, educate yourself. If you have $5 or $10, you can donate. We have some cool merch. Don't know if you saw our little slogan. Did you see our slogan? There's a sticker on there. It says, "Our fringe group is extremely moderate."
Yes, I love it. Let's hope you're not a fringe group for very long.
No, I'm just saying if we have a fringe group, it'll be extremely modern. But yeah, no, we have some, we're doing that. Like I said, my traction is the most, getting the word out. What you're doing here is great. But if people would like, share, tell their friends and neighbors, make small donations, that's great. This only works if the public buys into it and educates themselves about it.
Well, I put snippets on YouTube. Recently, some of my shorts have been not the shorts I wear, but some of the shorts on YouTube have had 6, 7, 800,000 views. So
Wow.
let's hope that I can get you those kind of views and likes and things like that. And so I'm really grateful that your office reached out to me, Mariah, right? And when I read about you and what you're doing, I said, this is different thinking for different times. And here I was talking about it in, very shortened versions on other episodes about advice for Democrats from an independent and advice for Republicans from an independent. This is advice for the country. This is advice for voters to consider, because there is a lot of frustration, as you know. And so,
And I think, Steve, if I was inside the system, I'm not sure I would have come up with this idea. Like, I think because I did not understand it, and everybody's telling me I couldn't do it, that I kept just barreling ahead. And I think, and then when they sat back and looked at it legally, they're like, we can do this.
I love it. I would love it. And maybe someday, although I'm in my 70s, I'll be 74 this year, I would hope to even run using the system, and who knows, right? Because money, of course, to get into raising money, and I'm not part of either political apparatus, to your point, that's the other thing. I'd have to be part of it, have worked in it, then get the approval of the
That was my very
party
initial
gods.
motivation, Steve. Back in 2016, there was a seat that opened up around here, and I thought for about 3 seconds about it and had the same conclusion you did. It's like, I don't want to be part of this. This is a job I would not want. And that is a shame. And that
It
was
is.
really why
It
when
is.
I launched this committee in 2021, that I decided that it wouldn't about me running for Congress or changing laws, but change the system from the outside. The
Yeah.
founders never envisioned a government they would be part. They were thinking not about themselves; they're thinking about something that other people be part of. Now everybody's looking like, how do I keep my seat?
Yeah.
And that's the problem.
Yeah. Well, to
I'll
your
never
point,
run.
and me either, and to not with the existing system, and to your point, to get 20 seats from either side, right? To a total of 40 seats would make a big difference, because now the majority's gone in the House.
The Speaker of the House would be elected in the full chamber. It would moderate the election of the Speaker. The Speaker is a party leader because that election occurs outside the chamber. And if you force that election to occur inside the chamber and be negotiated, you're having a moderate Speaker.
I love
To
it.
be the center of the curve.
I hope I see it before I leave this world for the second time. I take every day as a gift. I wake up here and I say, oh, I got work to do. Because when you wake up on the other side, by the way, and that's all it is, I say death should be called what's next, not death. There's nothing to do, because it's like I said, it's beyond all human comprehension and understanding. So I wish we would all get a glimpse of that, the whole country, because if we came back like I did, we wouldn't be so petty, and we would not be enrolled in one party or the other. We wouldn't be, because we would understand that how small-minded our thinking is, including about religion and faith and God, all the things that we think that it models. It doesn't. Based on my experience, I don't try to convince anybody of it, because I say, well, you'll all experience it at some point. And I never worry about it, right? Every night I say, thy will be done. And in politics, I would like your will to be done.
Thank you, Steve.
Something great.
And I really appreciate you having me on your show. You've been a great host and given me an opportunity to really convey everything I want to convey. So appreciate it.
Yeah. Give the website one more time, Tom.
Sure. It's mainstreetparty.org, America's Main Street Party. And if you have extra time, go to wilsonsfountain.us. That's our place where we explore the history of James Wilson and the free and equal election clause.
I love it. I love it. Tom, it's a pleasure having you. Let's stay in touch.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, I'd love to stay in touch about how I can help you.
That's great. Appreciate
All
it.
right. Thank you.
Have a good night. All right.
Good
Bye.
night.